Joe, so the reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast is one, because I've been following your stuff for a long time, but two, because on October 18th, I wrote a journal entry and I listed you as someone who has cultivated their energy. Do you think that's accurate? And if it is, what do you think has led to you cultivating your energy?
Okay, so I mean, define these terms, define energy for me, because that's one of these terms, right? It floats around, and it's like a very loose term that people can just apply their own definition to. So if you tell me what that means, or what it means in this context, then I'll answer your question.
Fair enough. Well, to give you some examples of other people that I put in that category, it was Rob Lipsett, Joe Dispenza, and my yoga teacher. What
Okay.
what I think I meant by it was just that you had a way of being that seemed like you were self-aware and expressed yourself as you truly are or were in videos that I've watched. So I think that's what I was getting at by cultivating your energy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So then the other part of that is cultivating, and then you get into a question of like how much of how you are is truly intentional. How much is it the illusion of your own intention? And what would you be like anyway? Do you know what I mean? So when you said like when you mentioned the other people, Rob Lipsett is there is different, right? And I don't think that his energy is. I think he wakes up, and before a thought goes through his mind, he's got that energy. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I don't think that he has purposely ever thought. I mean, maybe he has, but the impression I get from being with him, hanging around with him, is that there's something just about that. It's there's something in his genes, or something. Do you know what I mean? He couldn't turn that off. You know what I mean? Um, I suppose I am probably more. I suppose you could apply the word cultivated, but you know, it's very hard because if I try and think back, right, I go back to probably before I started YouTube, and there was certainly like periods of my life where I just felt like pretty normal, right? Now, again, you have to be careful using the word normal, because it's as if you're saying that you're not, you know, I don't want to be like not relatable and that. Anyway, there was periods in my life where I felt pretty normal, right? And then there was periods in my life later where I felt not that normal. You know what I mean? Where I just felt more than like I felt more. I suppose I'm trying to evade like terms that are just that are going to be too vague to get anything from, right? I don't just want to talk and say things like that no one can actually like get anything from. But I suppose like for me, it was a process getting from living less authentically to living more authentically. Do you know what I mean? That was a process. Like, I don't feel like I woke up and just suddenly, I feel like it was a lot of like thought and gradual realizations. And it wasn't just something, 'cause it probably is something you're born with, right? But then that's, you're born not knowing any different. And then gradually, depending on whatever, most of us, by the time we get to adults, we've lost a lot of the good shit you have as a child, and then you have to like get it back again. You know what I mean? Now, some things about some changes that happen as you grow up relating to like risk aversion or self-consciousness or anything like that. Some of them do serve a purpose, like, of course, because like when you're a child, somebody else makes sure you don't die, right? And when you're a grown up, you have to make sure you don't die, right? And so like there are purposes to these things, but like some of them, either we take them too far or they don't really. It's just a natural consequence of like all the things you go through in adolescence and early life. And then by the time you get to being a grown up, you're like, oh, I wish I was a bit more like a kid. Do you know what I mean? I wish I was as carefree as a kid. As like when you're a kid, you don't know what it's like to be embarrassed, right? You don't know what embarrassment is. You don't know what it's like to feel self-conscious about something. You don't have any even concept of like social anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like you have to go through a process to get that shit back, you know. But I suppose that depends on what your life is like up to that point, right? You know.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you're a kid, or at least when I was a kid, all I was thinking was, can't wait to be an adult. I can't wait to drink alcohol. I can't wait to do all these things that adults do.
Mm.
Um, but when you're an adult, you're like, oh, I wish for all that stuff that I was a kid. Give me all that stuff. So it's kind of funny how we're like always longing and always thinking, oh, the grass is always greener over there.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that is probably true though, in every, you know, whichever direction you look in. And it's actually, it's not just that it kind of works both ways. Like you might look back on a period of your life and actually imagine it to be, you know, better than it was really, or imagine you to be happier than you were, or whatever it is, right? Because you're just so, you've you're kind of, but what does it matter, right? That's the point, right? What does it matter? Because it's just a memory, right? So let's say I go on holiday and it's not that great, but then 2 years later I'm looking back on it and I'm like, wow, that was sick. Like, you know, then it was sick. Then there you go. Like it was sick now. Do you know what I mean? So like, in a sense, it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's getting quite philosophical into like real versus utility, like, isn't it, in a way?
Because you've recorded so much of yourself and documented so much of your life, how often do you think that happens where you're looking back and you're like, wow, that was actually not that sick in real life? And then you're looking back at the video and you're like, wow, that looks pretty sick.
Yeah, see, I think like I definitely noticed that, right? It's definitely happened because like I look back at, you know, every most things are better looking forward to them or looking back on them, because most of the time you're not really there anyway, because you're just looking forward to something else or back on something else, right? And so it's like, but I mean, probably a lot, but again, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like, I try not to be too to dwell too much. Like, once the past is past, I don't really ruminate on it too much. I don't really sit there and think. Like, I enjoy looking at old photos, like old videos and stuff. Uh, but I won't really sit there and regret or think like, oh, I wish it was like that, you know what I mean, or like, oh, you know, because you've just got once you fully understand that you've not got, and it doesn't, it's not real, man. It's just the same as the way you think about the future, isn't it? All it is that when you envisage the future, maybe things, the actual images in your head are a little less, there's a little less clarity on them. They're not quite so vivid. Whereas when you remember the past, just the pictures are more vivid, but it's still the same. It's still it's just a scenario in your head, like. And so although mean, in a way, it's great, right? Because you don't film the shit parts, right? You just film the sick stuff. So I watch videos and I'm like, that was sick, right? And then when I'm 90, I'll look at a load of these videos and I'll be like, wow, that was great. You know what I mean? That was great. Because you don't like, the fact is, right, no matter how in the moment you live, no matter how like present you are, some stuff's just normal, man. Most of life is pretty normal, like, you know what I mean? It's just normal shit every day. Supermarket, you know, walking down the street, waiting, you're on hold to the bank, whatever it is, right? Normal shit. And like that's just a fact of life, right? But luckily we live long enough, like our lifespan, decent, right? You know, good enough that you can do that. You can be on hold, you can be stuck in traffic, still fit a lot of good shit in there before you die. Right? So yeah, I mean, I suppose I've got a highlight reel, but in the same sense, even if the video is sick, it's nothing's the same as being there, man. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's just, although I've recorded a lot, I don't. It's just there. It's just files. Do you know what I mean? It's just files for me. You know?
Do you feel like you're happiest in the present moment?
What do you mean? Do you mean am I happiest right now,
Are you
as opposed to?
happiest? Are you happiest when you're in the present moment as opposed to looking
Oh,
back or looking forward?
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, but you only, because sometimes even good memories aren't a good feeling to think about, because a
Mm.
good memory can be a bit of like, oh, there's a bit like, wow, that was so good that it makes me feel a little bit sick. Like sometimes I think back to things and I'm like, wow, I feel like this is, although that was really good, the memory of it, thinking about it might not be that pleasant because I don't know what it is. It's maybe that maybe you're thinking, shit, that was then and this is now. I'm not there now, or but I haven't really pinpointed that down. All I know is that I think about like, you know, Ibiza 2015 or something, 2014, whatever, or many times throughout my life, like 2011 when I first traveled on my own and stuff. And some parts of it just make me feel just a little bit like nauseous, man. I don't know why.
Because you're comparing yourself to
Who knows, mate?
then.
I haven't picked that apart. I'm not much of a, for all I talk, I don't spend much time on introspection. Do you know what I mean? I don't spend much
Wild.
time trying to pull things apart and say, no, you know, like I think about that in the moment. Like, so right now, if I feel like pissed off about something, I'm like, right, what am I pissed off about? Why am I pissed off about it? Should I be pissed off? Can I not be pissed? Right. But I don't think, I think too much analysis of every single thing that pops in and out of your head is just a waste of time, and B, it can just be a rabbit hole that there isn't actually no end to, because you can peel back layers, like, but you know, there might be infinite layers, right, that date back to when you were like 6 months old, right? And do you want to do that, or do you want to just get on with your life? Like I'm certainly like, although I enjoy talking philosophically and I enjoy like what I suppose we could say, quote unquote, deep conversations, I'm really not a fan of sitting there and thinking about, you know, every little like thought that's ever popped into my head, and why and the reasons behind it. And, you know, because I don't feel like, I feel like if you're fine, right? If I'm sat here on this chair now and I feel pretty good, right? I'm fine. I'm great, right? So there you go. What else? Like, what's the problem, man? It's not necessary to think like, oh, last week I felt a bit sad and like, you know, maybe that's related to my own insecurities about this, and like, it doesn't have to be that complicated, you know. Like, so yeah. I forgot what your original question was. Am I happiest in the present moment when I'm being present? Uh, for sure. I think everyone is, aren't they? Everyone. Hopefully, I hope everyone is. Yeah, but you know, your moments of like true perspective and like clarity, you know, they're just moments. Like, you can't live. It's hard to live like that, man. Maybe some people live like that. Maybe, the Dalai Lama lives like that, man. But for the rest of us, you just have moments, mate. Appreciate a moment. Just carry on with your life. Wait for the next one.
I want to push back on the introspection piece because
Okay.
I I've sat with my thoughts for a long time, or longer than I ever have in the past year, 2 years, because COVID, and then forced to just sit down and evaluate and see where some of my insecurities came from,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that some of the situations in which someone else harmed me or I harmed someone, I was still holding on to. And then when I recognized that, I was able to forgive that person or forgive myself for that situation. And I felt so much lighter because of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay. So I'm sure that productive introspection exists, right? I'm just saying not all introspection is productive, right?
mm,
You know what I mean? If it's something that, because, you know, if it's something that is going to solve some kind of problem in your life, or in how you interact with other people, or how you do career wise, or how you think about yourself, then fair enough. Do what you got to do, sort your shit out, right? But I feel like we are in almost a culture of like making up problems to some extent, right? You know what I mean? And again, you have to pass the, you know, I'm not talking black and white here. I'm not saying that nobody's problems are valid. I'm just saying not all of them are. Like, that's fair, right? And so, like, if you're gonna spend time thinking about why you think this and why you think that, and where you're, but it comes down to the fact that, like, the one of the kind of, I don't know, I don't like mantra because it sounds cheesy, but I like to say to myself, if it's not a problem, it's not a problem, right? And that's how, and I define problem by, does it affect my life, right? Negatively. Do you know what I mean? Does it right? So let's say, like, as a basic example, let's say, like, I track my calories, and how much proteins and everything, right? And every time I eat something, I put it in my phone, right? And then somebody might say, every time you look at food, do you think about how many calories? And I might say, yeah, it's just kind of automatic, right? And they might say, well, aren't you obsessed with food? And I'm like, well, I don't really give a shit. I don't know. It doesn't really affect my life. It just, do you know what I mean? Am I obsessed? Like, what do you mean? That's just naming something. But, like, if it's not a problem now, I mean, I don't track everything. I'm just trying to think of a basic example. Let's say you work a lot, right? And someone says you're a workaholic. Well, what if it doesn't negatively affect my life whatsoever, right? There are lots of people. There are people even with, like, what could easily be defined as, like, disorders, in terms of, like, personality disorders, but still function on a good or high level, right? And it doesn't. So let's say, you essentially, what I'm trying to say is, like, if I will only try and address something if it's actually causing me actual problems, like, right? And if it's not, then I won't. And so, of course, I'm sure, because I can't sit here and say, right, in the moment, if I feel angry or sad, then, I'll try and kind of analyze that and figure out why. I can't say that's okay, but say it's not okay retrospectively. Of course it is. Of course, there are times when you need to figure out why you're thinking what you're thinking, instead of just thinking what you're thinking, right? Um, so, like, of course, there are times when it's going to be productive for you to do that and to figure your shit out. But I just don't think that it's always necessarily productive. And I think that, in a sense, like, our culture these days is a bit too, I really I like when people just got on with shit. You know what I mean? And now like the trouble with saying that these days is because people will interpret that as the extreme, in its most extreme form, which is something along the lines of, are you saying that people's, issues, aren't valid unless they're, so, it's like you're belittling like mental health and like people, but that's an extreme like perversion of what I'm actually trying to say. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose it comes down to the fundamental like reason why we have a lot of societal issues, particularly around like conversation, whether that's on social media or anything else. And it's just that, just past the fucking nuance, man. Just be able to fucking have, sense some kind of context and not take everything to its extreme, or in its most basic form. So I hope I justified my my lack of introspection.
Why do you think that our culture has had such a difficult time just getting onto the next thing? And why do you think we make such a big deal about problems that, in your respect or your view, aren't valid?
Listen, right, it's easy for me. Obviously, I'm not trying to say I'm just me, right? So all I know is my own problems or lack thereof, right? And so I can't say that anyone else's individually are valid or invalid, right? Um, but I think that there's definitely a combination of factors that have contributed to what I would say is, or what I would describe as, too much sitting there and fucking thinking about shit in your bedroom and reading books about how you're supposed to live your fucking life, right? So you can quote that. Right? You've got like a self-improvement industry, right? Which is an industry, right? And like self-improvement feels great, man. Feels nice. Read a book about how you're going to be like a better person. Think about it a bit, get a notepad, fresh new notepad, treat yourself, right? Write all these things that you're going to do. It's just a little like exercise and just like indulging yourself, right? And then like you can sit there and just imagine like how great you're going to be once you've carried out all these improvements on yourself, right? Now, what's the actual utility of that, and how again, you have to figure out like what is productive, right? And I'm not saying that it's never productive to, analyze things, right? Of course it is at times, but I think it's more productive to like leave your bedroom and just do some shit. It's more productive to just speak to other people, right? Like you can, so if you're feeling bad about yourself, right, there's a couple of ways to fix it, right? You can sit there and think, why do I feel bad about myself? Do I need to address some underlying issue? All right. Or just go out with your mates, probably forget about it. So I mean, it's like, I mean, I'm not saying that that's going to fix everyone's issues, of course, but like often there's a simpler solution, right? And I think that I think that we're encouraged, right, to overanalyze, right, but because the pendulum swung, right, because like now you'll hear stuff, right, like let's talk about mental health because, right, this is a big faux pas from me to be, but anyway, right, I'm going to carry on. So it was right. Let's talk about mental health because there's a stigma around talking about mental health. Hiya, Joe. I've got a company. We sell t-shirts, trying to get lads to talk about their feelings and shit like that. Right? Fair enough. Right? Once upon a time, there was undoubtedly quote unquote stigma around talking about mental health issues. Right? for sure. I'm sure there was. Is that still prevalent today? Probably not. I would say probably not. At least in my experience. Like, I mean, maybe it is, but I would say if I go on Instagram now and write a caption about my mental health, right, probably do quite well. Probably get a few likes. I mean, I'm not saying I would do that purposely to get the likes, but the option is there, right? So, is there a stigma? Probably not, right? Probably not. But the pendulum has swung, right? And we as I mean, I'm talking as if I actually know shit. You have to understand that. I just make videos about fitness, right? But I feel like as a society, the pendulum, we overswing every time. Boom, like too far one way, too far the other way, and we gradually tend towards something that is like good for society, or I want to say correct or right, but you can't. There's no such thing really in a sense. But and so like it went from like stigma to like definitely not a stigma, as far as I can see it. And I'm not saying that that's too far, because there's nothing wrong with it. But if you then encourage like people to be hyper aware of like mental health issues, or like, oh, have I got anxiety? Right. Well, you've probably got, like, most people could probably got a bit of anxiety, because that's normal, man. That's just like, that is life. Like, you do experience some level of anxiety now, but there are levels where it's like, is it debilitating anxiety? Can you walk into a bar without shitting yourself, right? Even if you feel a little bit uneasy, right? I've walked into bars before and I felt, oh, there's a lot of people in here. I feel weird, man. It's weird. Do you know what I mean? But then I'm still here, like, I'm all right. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, a lot of people feel like some level of anxiety and stuff like that, and like experience like some of the more minor symptoms, or minor ways that, like, minor things that are associated with like mental health issues. Now, obviously, there's the other end of the spectrum, which is like actual like depression and psychotic episodes and etc. etc. Right? But if now a whole generation is on the lookout, right? Am I depressed? Like, and constantly asking themselves, like, am I depressed? Right? Have I got anxiety? Like, then like inevitably you're going to have a small section of those who probably self-diagnose wrongly, right? Just as there will be, just as when the stigma was that way, there was a lot of people like undiagnosed, and so I think that, like, in a sense, whether that's, even irrespective of the mental health conversation, it certainly encouraged a lot of like ruminating, navel gazing, just over the top, like, and it's in every area, because it's people thinking, right, what should I do for a career? Shit, right? What is my like purpose? What's my one true calling? Oh, I need to, like, I'm gonna read a Robert Greene book on fucking mastery, right? And I'm gonna go and master something, right? And like, a lot of time people just need to just go and do something, like just go. It doesn't really fucking matter. Just go, like, work in a bar for a bit, man. You might just meet someone, or like whatever, and get into something else. Like, life will get you there, man. Or even if it's not there, like, it will get you somewhere if you're just active enough, right? And so, like, there's the career path that seems to be quite because we've got so many options nowadays as well, right? There's so many things to do. I can literally be anything I want, and so there's this like emphasis on like analyzing, like, your words, like your true passion, right? What's your passion, right? And there's like 18, 19, 20-year olds who've like just been to fucking school, right, and done not much else. Been to school, been to a few parties, been on holiday with the family a couple of times, not done much else, and they're sat there thinking, what's my passion? And I'm like, well, you haven't got one yet. You haven't, there's nothing there, man. So you're going to be looking for a while, right? If you sit there and spend time inside your head, you're going to spend a long time, like, before you come up with something, because there is nothing, and nothing's going to feel right. I've had that. You've always had that thing where, like, there's all these options, but none of them feel right. It's because none of them are. It's because because nothing's right yet, right? Because you have to, and so I suppose that's just one avenue in which the kind of over analysis can be, I think detrimental. Right now, as I say, I'm just a lad who doesn't know much about much, right? And so, I'm quite happy to be wrong, like, but I suppose I'm here to give opinions, so there we are.
I love it, man. On the passion piece, you've got such a great outlook on this because someone I was watching a Q&A recently, an old one of yours, and you were like, I never wanted to be a YouTuber. I just made YouTube videos and kept on enjoying it. And I kept on enjoying it. So I kept putting them up. And it's like, if we thought about life from that perspective of like, what do you do? What do you enjoy doing? What do you keep enjoy doing? That
Yeah.
will eventually give you a passion or something that you will want to do as a career or something longer term.
Again, but if there is something you enjoy, that's predicated on the idea that there is something you enjoy. Most people enjoy, like, playing football, right? And, not much else, right? You know what I mean?
Everyone enjoys something though.
Oh,
Everyone, if you look deep enough, if you go into your Amazon history, if you actually do stuff, you'll find things you enjoy.
yeah, well, exactly. Well, that's the key phrase, right? If you actually do stuff, right? But you have to do stuff, and you don't always enjoy stuff straight away, right? Because it might be shit to begin with, right? Because more than doing the stuff, people enjoy being good at stuff,
Yeah,
right? And to be good at stuff, you have to do it for a
a
while
lot.
you're shit at it, right? And so, like, generally being shit at something isn't that enjoyable, but by definition, most people have to be shit at something before they can be good at something. And so, like, again, it just comes back to me, at least, to the idea of just, like, trying stuff out, just doing stuff. Like, people have got this fear of wasting time on the wrong thing. Like, look at, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He was a bodybuilder, then an actor, then a politician, right? You've got enough time. Do you know what I mean? There's enough time. If you just, like, you could spend 10 years working, like, a shit job, right? And you can still end up doing something good that you want to do, right? There's enough. Don't worry about wasting time, because you waste more time with indecision, right? You waste more time with inaction, just doing nothing, right? And that's when time passes so fast as well. If you don't do anything, then time just all of a sudden you're like, shit, where did that go? Right? It's because you've got no markers, like no milestones where you actually, like, were doing anything or feeling anything.
And doing more stuff also makes you an optimist and makes you a happier person. To quote you, generally becoming a positive motherfucker comes from exposing yourself to as many things as you possibly can, and you'll gradually realize the good in the world outweighs the bad, and you'll become an optimist.
Wow, I feel like that's an old one. Is that an old one? Where's that pulled from?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, that was my experience, but it might not be for everyone. You know what I mean? Because, like, I say, the good in the world outweighs the bad, but I didn't grow up in Yemen, man. You know what I mean? I'm not, like, in a, like, that's just for me. You know what I mean? Um, and actually, I don't know if I would still. I certainly. I'm not saying I would disagree with that, but I certainly wouldn't say it now. Do you know what I mean? Because now I've kind of moved away from even the term, like, optimism, or, like, optimistic, or, like, thinking positively, or, like, because now I don't think that. I think I'm just more. You could call it realism, right? You could call it being a realist, but I think there are somewhat negative connotations with being realistic, right? Because people say, oh, you shouldn't be realistic, dream big, right? But like, why can't, that's like saying that your dream can't be realistic. Do you know what I mean? That's
Mhm.
separating the two. Like I now I just feel like I don't think of myself as a positive person. I don't think of myself as an optimist. I just feel very at peace with like what is what is true to me, right? A lot of things just are things like, but that's because to me the real world is good enough, and I don't have to put a shine on it, right? I don't have to put a twist on it. I don't have to say, because I don't have to say, oh, I'm going to think positively about it, because I don't think, right, oh, everything's going to turn out great, you know, like I'm going to do this and that and like be super successful. I don't think England are going to win the Euros, right? I just think if it doesn't turn out great, everything's still going to be pretty good, still fine. Do you know what I mean? I'm like so okay with just what I perceive to be true about the world in a sense. Do you know what I mean? That I don't feel like I have to, not that you have to. I mean, it's fun in it, just looking at everything in through this optimistic lens. I just don't particularly like resonate with those words anymore. You know what I mean? Because I feel like real is legit, man. Real is decent, man. It's pretty good. You know what I mean? If you if you're conscious about how you live, right, then your everyday can be pretty decent, right? You know what I mean?
They had a study where, or it wasn't a study, it was a real life case study where you had prisoners of war, and what they found was the pessimist, they died because they were, oh no, it's going to be an awful day, and they actually believed it, and they died.
Mm.
The optimists, they found, also died because
Wow.
they said, oh, we're going to be freed by Christmas, and then Christmas would come and nothing would happen, and that would make them upset. But the realists found the way
Mm.
to survive.
Right, yeah. Because I guess that optimism is just a lie, then, isn't it? It's the bubble. Oh, it's a bubble which can burst, right? That's it. You have to be like, what if those hopes don't come true? Like, what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna be, capitulate, right? And so like I sometimes feel like when I used to talk more like that quote, it's easier for people to get on board with, and people will fucking love you for that, like, because you will encourage them and briefly you'll make them feel, you know, more optimistic about their own shit. It's somewhat like motivating, right? It's harder to be like what I would term like a realist, uh, without that seeming as if you somehow have less passion about things. It seems more plain to people. It seems like you're settling for real life, right? But that's the opposite of what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? I'm thinking that like what I that like my what is realistic for me, what is real, what is true is is good enough. You know what I mean? Is and that's an understatement, right? Because I feel like you don't have to, if you at least for me, right, if you can get to a point where you don't have to have expectations on things, and you don't have to, you're just fully, every situation is interpreted as is, right? So it's not like I'm thinking about, I'm thinking, I'm trying to think, when I think about good outcomes and bad outcomes, I'm trying to think just purely probabilistically, like, what are the chances of this going well? What are the chances of it going badly? What's going to happen if it goes well? What's going to happen if it goes badly? Is it going to, and like, if you can look at everything as objectively as possible and still think, That's pretty good, man. Then I think that's much better than having this, going through life being like, let's all think positive, guys, and then you have to make something up when if shit doesn't go great. You have to, like, oh shit, maybe we didn't think positive enough. It was you, wasn't it? Were you thinking negatively? you know so although I feel much more like kind of like just much more content, right? Generally feel much more content. I feel like that is harder for people to relate to, in a sense, because people they want you to be, especially on YouTube, right? If you, I mean, I don't do like vlog style videos and stuff anymore. Not really, anyway. I do have a different channel where I've started putting some stuff on, but like, people want energy from you, man. They want you to hype. They want hype. They want like enthusiasm. They want you to jump around. They want you to scream. You know what I mean? And like, it's pretty hard to be just a chilled out motherfucker and be like that, man. I can't be like that. You know what I mean? Even though at one point I probably was. Now I'm just way more. It's hard to describe, but I just feel way more peaceful. So yeah.
Yeah, it's apparent. And is it weird for you when people attribute quotes from a previous version of yourself to you, even though that version has almost died in a sense because it's not here anymore? I guess a previous version of us is always dying, but when the previous version is so different than the one that you are
Mm,
talking about today, where you
mm,
wouldn't even say something that has been quoted to you, is that
mm,
weird for you?
mm. But I don't feel that different internally. I just feel like I express things differently. Do you know
Gotcha.
what I mean? So
Hmm.
it's not really like, it doesn't sound like something. And like, the thing is, right, there's a lot of shit I've said, not just quotes about like my, views on my philosophy on life, right? There's a lot of other stuff that I've said that I probably wouldn't say now, right? But again, like, I just don't give a shit about that stuff, because that's what you get, man. That's what YouTube is. It's called the internet, right? And also that's what life is like. It's what growing up is. You know what I mean? You can't be scared to be like different. If and I don't mean different from other people. Obviously that's true as well. I mean different from how you were once, right? Because I had a I've had, well, you have a choice every day, really, but especially with YouTube, right? There was a time, my content has evolved, right? It's changed. And there was a time, a kind of fork in the road, where I could have carried on doing what I had like cultivated an audience to want. You know what I mean? Because you make a certain type of content, people subscribe who want that kind of content, right? And there's a few people in there who will watch anything you put out, just because they kind of like you, appreciate it. Just because they kind of like you, they're kind of on board, whatever. And they're more about like, they've signed up to you, right? And so if this, it's like a school class, right? Now, if you there's always going to be people there who still want the original stuff, right? But if you want to do different stuff, if you don't feel like that's really you anymore, you can just carry on doing it if you want, right? You can just be who you think people want you to be, who you used to be, right? But it's just going to be unconvincing, you know. And like, it's fucking hard. This is the thing. This is why people are like, because it's hard on YouTube to change your content, right? Because you think about what it's like you get in a relationship with someone and then you just change, right? And then they're like, oh, this ain't the person that I got with. You know what I mean? Well, that's what your subscribers are like, right? And people are subscribing and unsubscribing every day, and you can't be mad at, you got to let it go. Like, you just got to be like, listen, this is what it's always got to be, you've always got to prioritize your own, what you want to do. And I've always tried to, instead of trying to make content that I think people will like, I've always tried to make content that I want to make and make it good enough so that people like it. Because people, you can make people like like someone could click on a video, they might not know what the fuck it's about, right? If it's a sick video, it's a sick video. Do you know what I mean? And like, so you have to, but that takes a bit of nerve, you know what I mean? Because you have to, there's going to be pushback. There's going to be people who just want the old shit. When are you going to do this again? When are you going to do that again? How come you stop talking like this? How can you stop saying that? And you have to just be pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like self-assurance, right? You have to be sure of yourself, right? Because that's the one key thing. No, if you're going to do something, if you're going to change your content or whatever it is, I suppose there are parallels in real life outside of YouTube, maybe. But if you're going to change your content, you have to do it and be resolute about it and be confident in it and just be like, listen, this is what I do, and not be apologetic about stuff. And I suppose that goes for a lot of things. And so, like, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of quotes, all over the internet that I probably wouldn't say now, but I don't really, it's there for people to witness, right? If you used to think I was a dickhead and now you think I'm cool, that's sweet. If you think I used to be cool, now you think I'm a dickhead, that's equally sweet. Everyone's just floating around the fucking planet, crossing paths and going a different way. Maybe they cross paths again and whatever. Like, if you want to interact with my content, do it. And if you don't, I ain't mad about it, man, because this is the game that I signed up for, right? It's signed up for YouTube. So, like, if the channel dies, it's my fault. It's no one else's fault. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to say, oh, these subs ain't loyal. You know what I mean? Oh, please come and watch my YouTube videos, even though there's shit. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be, there's a contract or not a contract, but it's the rules of the game. Like, and you have to understand it and be accepting of it, because people, I wouldn't want anyone to watch my videos if they didn't want to watch them, right? I wouldn't want someone, I want to waste someone's time. You know what I mean? I don't want to sit there and watch a 10-minute video if I don't, just waste my life, right? 10 minutes is 10 minutes, right? You can waste it however you want. There's a million ways to waste it. And so I don't want to waste someone else's time. And if someone's, and like, occasionally you get comments, shit like, you started doing this, like, I'm out, see you later, unsubscribe. And I'm like, I'm not just acting like I'm not mad about it. I literally harbor zero, like, bad, feelings towards you for that. I'm like, I'm not just saying it's fine, but that's fine. Like, that is fine. Anyway, I rambled.
You are obviously a very secure, self-assured person. Was there ever a time in your life when you weren't so self-assured?
Yeah. Probably most of it, like most of my life. I think that, again, I think it's kind of like, it's kind of normal in it. I think you're a kid, you sure of yourself, you think, I want to throw this ball over there, or I want to, whatever. You go through school and like, oh yeah, you start getting some kind of like experiences of like being in social circles and like peer pressure, and like, maybe that's when you can get a bit, you can start being, you lose that you had as a kid, right? And then most of the time you get to like adolescence, you get to like, maybe I'd say that maybe like early 20s, mid 20s, something like that. And maybe you can get it back, right? Hopefully you can get it back. You probably never have it back as when you were 3 years old, right? But to some extent, to a large extent, you should reach a point where you're pretty secure with yourself. You don't have to be like this polished person, right? You don't have to be this person that's like, right, I know my opinion on every single thing and there's no loose ends, right? You're allowed loose ends. You're allowed mental loose ends. You're allowed to not know. You're allowed to be wrong about shit. You're allowed to change your mind on shit. But you just have to be, in a sense, that's really the key to it, being all right with changing, being wrong, stuff like that. That's what makes it, in a sense, if you can be like that, then you're really fairly untouchable, in some sense. So yeah, most of my life I was pretty unsure of myself. Do you know what I mean? I went through different phases, like listen to different music, just a normal person, man. And then I gradually, I suppose, accrued enough life experience, slash, slash pondered about it enough, and to reach a point where I was just like, I don't know, I suppose now I'm here, and I do feel quite, I suppose, sure of myself in a sense. Like, but again, you have to be quite careful with that, because it can overspill, can't it, into like arrogance, or into like what's it never, what's the word, I totally forget the word, but into never thinking that you're wrong, and a lack of humility, right? It can overspill. But if you try and be objective, I mean, I suppose it's nice. I also feel like, in a sense, you have a responsibility to other people to be like that. Well, that's how I feel anyway. I feel like it's polite, man. I feel like it's good manners to be, or at least fucking act sure of yourself. Do you know what I mean? If you're with other people, or or even like you're on holiday with your girlfriend, or you're in a group of mates, and the situations come up, you need to be, it's useful to, and it helps other people, right? It helps other people to be more confident in you. They have to see that in you, like, so yeah.
Joey D on self-assuredness. I love it, man. It's interesting because you said something there that kind of threw me off, which is like it helps other people when you're self-assured and when you're confident. Why do you think that is? Because it does. It does help other
Yeah,
people. It does help other people feel more confident. It does help other people say, like, oh, that person's taking a lead here. I appreciate that.
yeah.
But why do you think that is?
Well, I think because deep down, no one knows what the fuck is going on generally, do they?
We're floating on a
We just
rock
want
in
fucking,
space.
exactly right. We all just want like stability and some kind of like something to rely on. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You want something to rely on, some kind of solid. See, I think the way I came to that was thinking back to, like, I was thinking about YouTube, and I was thinking about YouTube videos and content and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, if I ask people, right, there are times when I'm sat there and I'm like, right, what video shall I make? Right. I've got no ideas, right? And if I ask people what they want to see, that's not just not, that's not going to get anyone anywhere, right? I'm going to get a deluge of just varied answers. And then I become someone who's just like, then what am I like? I just do stuff that people ask me to do. Surely there's more than that inside me. Like, surely I've got something to offer, right? And if I don't, then just don't upload a video. That's how I see it now. Like, and that's what kind of brought me to that. Like, people prefer when you are sure. Like, people prefer it's just something about security and safety, and I don't know, but certainly in scenarios where it's like either friends, or like if there's a dynamic of like leader and rest of group dynamic, like, for example, like if you're, let's say you're just traveling with your younger siblings or your girlfriend or something like that, and you are you're the head of the house right there in that scenario, as in like the responsibility falls on you. right? Should things go tits up in one sense or another. And I feel like it's both good, it's reassuring for other people to see confidence in you, and it also feels good to be that person as well, right? Because you have a sense of like caring for people, or looking out for people, I think so. And there's so much uncertainty, like there's so many people who are unsure of themselves, right? Me 5 years ago, you know what I mean? Me 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 years ago, right? So many people are just unsure, like when you, because I love it, right? When I speak to someone and they're just figured out, man. I just love getting that sense of like they know where they stand on shit. And if they don't know where they stand, right? So maybe you have never thought about fucking geopolitics or foreign policy, right? Maybe you never thought about that. But if you don't know where you, but if you don't know where you stand on it, then you say you don't know where you stand on it, and you're sure of that. You're sure you don't know. You're not making something up or trying to be someone else. I enjoy being in the company of people like that. People who don't give a fuck if it's silent for a bit. People who take shit like face value straight up and don't look for, oh, does this person mean that when they said that? Or are they saying this to mean this? And, I like straight up people. I like, straight down the middle. That's just what I enjoy being around. And so, like, in a sense, I suppose I try and be like that myself. You know what I mean?
You get a sense of calmness
Mm.
from someone who's willing to say they don't know, from someone who's not faking it, from someone who's like, this is who I am, take it or leave it, goodbye. You get calmness from that because you're not then trying to put on any front. And,
Yeah, for sure.
I really feel that from this conversation is like, I'm calm around you
Yeah,
because I know you're sure of yourself.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I suppose you feel that, like I went through, like say you're out and you start speaking to a girl that you don't know, right? Then like there are many opportunities there, pretty much every second, for you to make that awkward, right? Say it's a group of girls and you go over, you start talking, whatever. It could be awkward, or right, you could fall flat on your face in front of them and still get out of the situation looking pretty good, right? But it solely rests on your demeanor and how that makes other people feel, right? So like if something would be awkward or whatever, then there's always a way, like there's always a way to not to stop that from being awkward or whatever it is, right? It's just one situation. But I suppose that relates to in the way that how you are does translate to how other people feel, right? And if you're straight up with people, you're straight talking, you're sure of yourself, um you're like you can be balanced about being like humble. Humble is a buzzword, right? But it's it's so lost in the fucking minefield of people trying to be something, right? People trying to be, like there's so many people that aren't humble that talk about how humble they are, right? And vice versa. And also, the other end of that is like, you're also allowed to like sing your own praises where they are due. You're also allowed to do that. Or if I'm like if I'm really uh good at playing the fucking piano, right? But I'm really shit at cooking, then it's all right for me to say. I don't have to just say, oh, I'm shit at cooking, but yeah, I can play a bit of the piano. It's all right for me to say, I'm shit at cooking, but I'm really fucking good at the piano. Why is that? Why is there like a kind of asymmetry on that spectrum? It's weird, isn't it? There is like some kind of asymmetry there where like it's more acceptable to play down it's more expected than it is the other way.
Why do you think that is?
I have no clue, man, because because how it makes people feel. Because if you say, if I say to you, like, I'm like, let's forget, like, skills, but let's say there's some character quality. Let's say that I am like really compassionate, right? I'm not saying I am, whatever, right? Just an example. Let's say I'm really compassionate, right? Then like, if I say that, or if I like try and highlight my good qualities, I suppose it makes people feel bad. Does it make, I don't know, or does it make people feel like that you must be automatically? It's really because no one really uh, takes things at face value. No one, because it's because the implication is, if you say I'm really good at this, then someone will take from that, I think I'm great generally, right? Because there's no, I mean, language is not just the words, is it, right? And I think some of these are just societal and cultural adaptations, right? Where now we have different interpretations of certain things, right? You can say one thing and it can be interpreted completely differently. Especially where it comes to like offense and offending people, saying personal things about other people or about yourself, right? They can be interpreted, wildly differently to how they were intended. And it's to the point now where people know that. So we play this game of like, oh, I won't say this because it might, they might take it the wrong way. Oh, so I won't. So now you're playing the game as well, right? Instead of like, I'll say this because this word for word is verbatim, like is exactly what I mean, right? And if somebody takes it the wrong way, that's their issue, right? Now, in a sense, that's not really feasible with. I mean, I wish it was, right? Because I'm so blunt. I just want people to. I'm not gonna, like I used to have this manager at work when I was working for a bank. It was nothing glamorous, like believe me. Anyway, this manager used to tell me when shit needed doing, right? And if I said, "Oh, can I go early?" and he'd say, "No, do this," right? I was like, "All right, fair enough." It's just a completely non-personal thing, right? And I'd hear like other people in the team saying, "Oh, he's being a dick," he's doing, oh, he's punishing us for this. But I felt like he was just so. I felt like he was so straight up, so frank that it just going over everyone's head. Like some people don't, older generation. We're in a generation where people are. I don't want to say like, oh, we're like a sensitive generation, but like I mean like when I speak to my parents are both like older. They're both like in the 70s. When I speak to my parents, they're so fucking frank, right? My mom might say something and I'll joke and she might say something that like these days people would, she'd say, "Oh, that's not very good, is it?" Or something like that, and or like I might walk in with new trainers or some shit like that, and she'd say like whatever, and and like my generation would take these things as like some kind of slight, some kind of insult, but for a lot of people, especially that generation, right, it's not even crossed their mind as a personal thing. It hasn't even, and I love that. And it's not just our generation, but also like culturally, there are like there are countries like places around the world where people are more frank, right? Because the language is just formed that way, or because like just culturally they're more straight up and they'll just tell you like, and it's not really like really you should be able to say to say, right? I should be able to say, uh, I don't like your new haircut, right? And it's actually not personal. Like it's not a personal thing, right? Do you know what I mean? But that's not, you can't do that. Like that would be like a,
Major
you know,
faux pas.
exactly right. And I think, and
Because people assume today that if you say you don't like someone's haircut, that means that you don't like that person.
oh, they're ugly. They look ugly, right? They need to
Yeah.
think like, you know, but like it's so removed from that. And like I would never say that because I'm playing the fucking games, right? You know, I'm like, but I might say like if like my girlfriend cuts her hair, I might say, and she says, "Oh, do you prefer this or the last thing?" If it's the last thing, I'll say the fucking last thing, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, at my own peril, of course, right?
It's so weird though, because, you know, I was talking to someone and someone else said, "Hey, I like your new car." And someone said, "Thank you," as if that
Yeah,
person is the car. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like that
Exactly.
person is not the car. Why are you saying thank you for? That's just a vehicle you use to drive here to there. It's not something that is you. You
Yeah,
didn't do
yeah.
anything to make that car. You just bought it and are now driving with it.
Well,
Or
even
maybe in some case renting it. Like
same goes for the haircut, really. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
you're
just something
renting that
that's
hair.
it's just on you.
Yeah.
It's only the same as a t-shirt. Like
Yeah.
it's just something that's like it's so yeah. I mean, I forgot how we even got here, but yeah, I suppose I just thoroughly enjoy the the rare occasion that I can speak to people in a frank and just straight up. I just want to be taken exactly at face value, and I love it when people speak to me like that. And like it's like right. So I used to go to this restaurant in I was in I stayed in Toronto for a few weeks one time with like, we used to go to this Chinese restaurant like 2 a.m. or some shit. I think we were like jet lagged, whatever it was, right? Used to go with my brother and like the waitress, she'd come and she'd be like, "Are you ready to order?" And we'd be like, "Oh no, we're still looking." And she'd be like, "All right, hurry up." And like I was like, "Did she just tell us to hurry up?" I was like, "That's sick." Like I love that, man. Like, and now like when people serve me in a restaurant, I love it when they just when they just give me the like just give me the food, just whatever. I don't need someone to be like just doing this weird theater around me and like acting like it's this like occasion where like someone's like every time your water is like near the bottom, someone comes and pours it for you. I'm like, mate, I've got an arm. Do you know what I mean? That's what I've done this before. You know what I mean? And like I just love that abruptness in a sense, like but at the same time, I understand that it's not really the world we live in, and sometimes like I should probably exercise. It's probably one of my flaws. I should probably exercise a bit more awareness of the situation because I like to be like that with people as well. And it can just come across as rude. Like it just people who are used to, you know, who are used to communicating differently. If I speak to someone and I'm very, you know, frank, then it and then like my girlfriend will say like you that came across as a bit rude, and I'll be like, oh shit, like I'm just I thought, you know what I mean? I thought I was being polite actually. Sometimes I feel like being frank, being straight to the point and not going around, you know, the houses to get there. I feel like that's polite, man. I'm like, I'm
Do you
just saying,
think do you think you enjoy it because you value your time and you want the time
well, and
to just
theirs, right?
yeah.
And
And
theirs,
there's
right?
yeah.
Because I feel like
Yeah.
I just, you know, um anyway, this is a tangent, but yeah, I suppose.
It's all good, man. This whole thing's for a tangent, you know?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's the realist part of you is the part that just has a Q and A. You have a question up, you go answer the question, go in a completely different direction, and then at the end you say, "I just went on a tangent, didn't I?" I watched
Exactly.
that like 7 times when doing research for this. It's
Yeah.
just what you do.
Yeah.
Why do you
Yeah,
think that is?
I get led around. It's because I just get, I suppose, in a sense, like I'm bad at. I'm just, I just, I'm like a dog with a fucking scent. Do you know what I mean? I just get something and run with it, and then I relate something to something else, and I'll go down that, and then sometimes I struggle to circle back to my original point, and
Mm.
that's why like I find it hard sometimes to like I find it easier to talk than I do to write, because to write you need to be much more structured and much more disciplined with not going off into, because it's much harder to come back around. But with this, I can like break up a sentence, I can stop halfway through a sentence, say something else, and like start again, and it can flow much easier. I can get away with a tangent much easier than I could if I was writing, and so that's why I struggle to, put thoughts on paper so much.
Yeah. I sense that is creativity happening, like in real time, connecting one thing to another. The tangent that you're connecting to is like, oh, wow, that relates to that. That's
Yeah,
creativity, right?
maybe, I don't know if it's creativity or if it's just like it's just recognizing like patterns or recognizing similarities between things, isn't it? That's why I draw a lot of parallels between, I often think about how this relates to that, and how, we're talking about YouTube and then it relates to like how people think about this. And I try and, I suppose I'm always doing that, but I don't know if it's creativity is a hard thing to pin down, isn't it? I don't feel like a particularly creative person. Like
You
really,
don't?
no, not really. No, not really. Like, uh, I mean,
Why
I'm
not?
not. I don't know. I think I've just been around. I suppose I've been around people who I feel are more creative, and then I've thought maybe I'm not so. But it's hard because I suppose, creativity. It's kind of like intelligence, like because what is creativity really? All it is like trying new combinations of things, isn't it? Because you
Yeah.
can't make anything up. Like nothing's fresh. Like it's all shapes and colors, and words and sounds. There's not, and it's just different combinations, right? Because you can't make up a new color, right? Or and so
Classic Joey D line.
some people are just better at putting combinations
Combining
together,
things.
exactly, and have a more random selection, right, of things immediately available in the head. Now that's a weird concept to think about, right? Because if I say, right, uh, you know, choose like 5 ingredients and make something, but your first ingredient's probably going to affect, right, your second ingredient, because you're going to say something and then you're going to think, all right, what sometimes goes with that, and then what goes with those things. But like some people would say the first thing and it might be, you know, soy sauce, right? And then the second thing might be something completely, for us, we might go rice, right? Or whatever. And some people would have uh, a broader catalog to just fucking pick from, right? And I don't feel like I'm like that. I feel like if I do anything that looks creative, like if I make a video that comes out as something that people think is creative, it's just because I've spent time on it, and it's just because I've tried different things, and I feel like it's harder for me to get there, you know. But that's just some people are like that. Some people it's easier. Intelligence is complex, right? And creativity is a facet of that, I would say. Certainly, if it's even, intelligence is so broad that it's barely useful, right? It's barely useful as a term, it's on its own without further explanation, right? And I suppose we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and in different areas. And I don't think creativity particularly is one of mine, but really that's a good one to not have, because I've got the time. Like I say, life's long enough. We live long enough, right? I can sit there and I can try different shit with the video. If I have to edit it for 48 hours, I'll edit it for 48 hours, right? So that's okay. You know what I mean? I'm not usually on a time frame where I have to, not many people are saying, think of 5 ingredients. You know what I mean? So it's okay.
In a different video, in one video, you said if you weren't doing and making YouTube videos, you'd be a film director or something in film.
Yeah.
And I'm curious when you made the realization that film was something so near and dear to your heart. Because
Yeah.
YouTube is a sort of film, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. Although my content now is much more, see, I'm trying to free up time so that I can do more expressive shit, really. Do you know what I mean? Because I just like, what I like most probably isn't in my content these days, right? I like feelings that don't have words for them.
Mm-hmm.
or combinations, recipes, right, of feelings that don't, you can't, that are best. You just, the right sound with the right visual is just a different experience for me, right? It's just something that like people can, and if people get from it what you intended, now you'll never really know that because no one, I don't know, you know what I mean, is your red my red? I'll never know, right? uh but if, but people like sharing feelings, right? People like, there's nothing that people like more really than having an experience in common with people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so something amazing happens to you, you want to tell someone immediately, right? And you're describing it, it's the best moment of your life, right? And you're describing it and you're like, right, no, really, but it was so sick. You have to, that's, and you're trying to put the words on it. And the words, you just feel like you're like, and it's, they're not good enough, right? And you feel like no matter what, even if somebody really seems to like empathize with it and they're really like, oh, they're really engaged in what you're telling them, you feel like you don't quite feel exactly how I felt. Right? I want you to like, I wish I could just give it you so then we could just have this common experience, right? And I feel like sometimes videos are a good way to doing that, you know, especially some of the more kind of, I like slow, like I'm not into YouTube in the sense of like there's a YouTube style which is like transitions and like, you know, these effects and stuff, and I'm like, I don't like this this kind of thing, right? But again, it's just personal preference because I don't get much out of it because I feel like it's the,
Fast
it's,
food.
yeah, exactly right. I like subtleness, you know what I mean? I like to work for a feel. I like to
Mm-hmm.
fucking look at it and ruminate and just, and that's why like sometimes it's the same with music. You don't, if you listen to a track or something and it's playing out of your phone, so you forgot your headphones, whatever, it's playing out your phone and it's this tinny sound, you've got a bit of background noise, it's not the same, man. But you can be sat there, headphones on, no sound, no you know, ambient noise coming in, and it's a different fucking experience, right? And you had to sit there and think, what? And then like, you know, and so for YouTube, I feel like those kinds of videos like are what I enjoy most. Now I haven't done much of that, but I do intend to, like, because that's just something you can't really. It's just rewarding, right? It's just nice to see like comments where you feel like people are somehow getting close to what you intended from it, you know, and like also I feel like there is a, as I was saying before about people who vlog and you need to be like shouty and you know, this it's like snappy. There's like a loss of an appreciation for like subtlety, right? And you only get, and you can get that through photos or videos, but you don't appreciate the transition that goes between them, right? That's not, you appreciate just the framing of the shot, or you know, just there's a sound effect you don't really notice, but it makes a fucking difference, right? Do you know what I mean? And all these things contribute to like, I guess, just an experience. And there are some videos I watch on YouTube and I'm like, this is serious stuff. Like, you know what I mean? And the people, maybe channels that aren't that big or whatever, and just people are really good with like choosing a shot, put it, you know, choosing like a bit of the right track or whatever. And I feel like that's like there's a lot of potential for that on YouTube, you know, because people are talented, man. There's a lot of talented people out there, but a lot of it sometimes just gets sunk, just gets kind of buried under, you know, it's algorithm versus, because algorithm ain't the, you know. Now I play the algorithm on my on my career, on my job channel. Yeah, play the algorithm on that one because you know, that's of course, right? But it's not conducive to YouTube's. It's not designed to promote like satisfying content, or you know, it's just designed to keep people there, and you know, and it ends in this just weird, like fucking perverted, like twisted sense of what videos, you know, I mean, not all, obviously there's good content out. I'm not saying that you have to see, this is another thing as well. I mean, I suppose it's nuance again, and it's just context, right? But a lot of people think like either you make good content or you make content that's good for the algorithm. Like you can do both. You can do both, obviously. And anyone who says one or the other, and people who blame their videos doing shit on them not being like appropriate for the algorithm, of people who are making excuses, right? You can do both, right? Either in the same video, or if that's too difficult, because it might be too difficult, right? Because maybe the kind of videos that you like to make don't lend themselves particularly well to what does well for the algorithm. Fair enough, right? So just make two channels and just do a different, just make another channel. Do you know what I mean? And you know, but anyway, tangents.
There's nothing better though than having someone comment something, or you look at a piece of art being like, I don't know what it is, but that's freaking amazing. Like that is so sick. And you can't put your finger on it at first. And maybe if you watched it or looked at it 10 times, you wouldn't understand it because you don't have the knowledge or whatever, but you know something in you is saying, damn, that was a good conversation. Or
Yeah.
damn, that was a good video. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but when you have that feeling, it's inexplainable.
Especially with videos and media of all sorts, I suppose, videos, pictures, shit you see in real life as well. Like the feeling of like awe, of like being in awe of something is like crazy feeling, man. That's a
Yeah.
crazy good feeling because you're like, fuck. You're like, I live on this planet, man. And sick shit like this exists. That's mad. And like you don't know why, like it makes you feel something, or how to describe it, but it's just like this feeling of like amazement. And there's not, the word awesome is fucking just bastardized, right? It's just like it's one of those now that is just not, it's lost, mate. You never
Doesn't
get
mean
it
anything.
back. But on its own, like AWE is just different, man. It's almost separate from the word awesome, but it's like you don't think, so many words like that, isn't there, that are lost, like fantastic. Like fantastic now means good, means like a really good thing, but fantastic
Love. What
should
about
mean
love?
like, yeah, well, that loves another kettle of fish, man. Loves a whole different kind of worms, isn't it, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'm talking about mainly, you know, words that where the meaning has been, you know, because like fantastic, for example, used to be like fantastical, as in like it's like a fantasy, as in like it's crazy, it's out of this, you know, it's unimaginable type thing. Whereas now it's just like it's pretty good. You know, and there are a lot of words like that. It's pretty interesting in the English language how many words you don't realize are kind of related to each other until one day you say it and you're like, wow, I didn't realize that word came from that word. And it's like, you know, but I suppose again, it's just language games, isn't it? It's how we adopt things. And you know, love is, you know, love is overused, I suppose, but then again, it's not really, because it's highly just contextual, isn't it? It's just context dependent, man. Because you can say, "Oh, I love that," you know what I mean? I love that cereal. Maybe you do.
On that similar topic about how language evolves, I heard the other day that people are getting upset when you end text messages with a period because it insinuates that you're angry. What are
Right.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a non fucking problem, man, isn't it? That's just a non-issue. It's just add it to the list of non-issues, man. I have heard that, yeah, yeah. But it's like your mum calling you by your full name or something, isn't it? Like Joseph. I'm like, oh no, what have I done? You know what I mean? It's just those things like uh again, yeah, it's a non-issue, man.
Dude, I have so much more I want to talk to you about. Um, do you got a little more
Yeah,
time or
yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. Go ahead. I just
sweet?
missed a call out of from so I just got back from Greece. And you have to, because that's on our travel amber list, so you have to quarantine at home for 10 days when you get back. So I just missed a call from like basically the fucking government just checking if I'm at home. So someone might bang on the door and ask if I'm home, but it's fine. Carry
All right,
on. Now I'm
we'll
free.
carry on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to ask a question that might be helpful to people listening, which was, you had a job at some point, a banking job you mentioned, and you're quite down about it. I remember listening to you on a podcast saying you would just drive around in the middle of nowhere and just drive for the sake of driving.
Chronic restlessness is the term that I adopted for it. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you do to take that step out? Maybe it could help some person listening who's in a similar situation.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I did practically was save money, right? So again, I think especially in conversations like this, people like me, right? We can go into the abstract too much, and like practical advice is great, man, and a lot more useful to people often than the throwing buzzwords about following your passion and doing the shit. You know what I mean? So the first thing I did was save money, right? So I worked for about, I had that job for about 14 months. I was living at home with I was 20, how old was I at the time? It must have been, I was just 20, 22 to 23 kind of age. Uh, and, or maybe it was 23, 24. Anyway, and I was living at home with my parents, and I paid them like, a couple of £100 a month just for food and shit, just because it's token rent money. It's not actually rent money, but they just feel like you should do something, right? And I drove like a pretty shit car that didn't really cost me much. And then apart from that, I didn't really do that much because I was working 9 to 5. The commute was, a good 45 each way. At least probably an hour actually. And then the weekends, like maybe I'd go out, maybe play football. But even when I went out, I wouldn't drink. I'd just drive, whatever. And so I was saving probably 55, 60% of my income. So I saved, a decent little chunk of money. And then I remember once, it was funny. We were contracting, so we weren't like a full-time, basically you're not a full-time salaried employee. You're on a contract, which they can terminate at any fucking time. You're basically temping, right? And so because of that, you get a better day rate, which is better for me. You get paid a bit more, but you don't get any benefits, pension, sick pay, holiday pay, anything like that, right? Which suited me. I didn't give a fuck. I was like, I'm 23. What? I'm never gonna need a pension, right? And so money was all right, nothing crazy at all. But I was just saving a good chunk of money, trying not to spend, not to spend much at all. And then basically what I did was wait until I had enough money to think, to feel secure, and just fucking left. It was funny. I actually had a brief period of a month or two where I wasn't working there because they just cut our contracts up and said, "Oh, we don't need you anymore." Then they called us a month later and said, "Oh, we need you back for a bit." So there was like a month or so that I wasn't working there, and I went to a couple of other job interviews. And I remember having this interview at some like recruitment company that it wasn't for a specific job, but it was for this woman that would then put you forward for positions that were like back office jobs in like fucking, you know, investment firms, shit like that. And the starting salary was atrocious, right? It was on its ass, right? It was fully just a joke, right? And she said, "Oh, we've got this position that we want to put you forward, and it's this much." And I was like, I mean, I was just earning like more than double that at this. And she was like, and she said, this always stuck to me. She said to me, "Well, I mean, because it was a decent wage, the original one. I mean, it was like average wage for the UK, maybe just over average wage, right? But because that was my first full-time job out of university, that's a pretty decent wage, right? But this was like less than half of that. And I remember she said to me, well, you're going to have to take a pay cut at some point. And I was like, what? I was like, what did you just fucking say to me? That was more offensive, right, than anything I've ever heard, right? The inevitability of it just disgusted me. Like the level of like, oh, we'll just accept your shit, man. Just take the fucking. And I was like, what? I mean, I did take a pay cut, but only the first year when I worked for myself, you know, before I started earning actual money. Anyway, that's just another tangent. So the moral of this story is if someone tells you that one day you're going to need to take a pay cut, tell them to fuck off. Like, because if I would have took that, mate, life would have been different, right? Anyway, so I basically just saved up enough money and I left, and I didn't really have a plan when I left, right? And I'm not saying that everyone should leave without a plan, but obviously the amount of money you save up should be proportional to how good you are at making plans, right? And if you think you can sit there and come up with something good, then maybe you don't need that much money, right? Now, it's better to have a cushion, of course, right? I think I saved about £14,000, right? So GBP, right? And so I was still living at home, so they weren't going to kick me out anytime soon. You know, I could keep paying a couple £100 a month rent. It wasn't going to go anywhere anytime fast, right? And I was pretty confident that I would come up with something, right? So confident, in fact, that I spent a bit of that money in traveling and stuff like that. I went away, did a bit of traveling like Southeast Asia and stuff. That was my second time there. It was the first time I went to Australia. I didn't spend long in Australia, obviously, because that does get expensive. And when I was out there, actually, I was on like one of the Gili Islands, like just off like Lombok. And I was sat there and I was thinking, this was like when online fitness was like, it was like starting to be a thing. Like just Instagram wasn't really that big, but it was like 2013. It was like, you know, getting there ish. And I thought maybe I can like do, because I'd already started while I was at the bank, like making some kind of videos, right? It wasn't like on YouTube. It was, I'd put them on Facebook, and it was just like fuck about stuff with a few of my mates. We'd start going to the gym. We'd start making like what we thought were like funny fitness videos. Like they obviously weren't that funny, but we thought they were
aesthetics.
Exactly right. So, it was at that point I thought, right, when I get back, I'll do like my like PT qualification so that I'm like technically qualified to fucking sell people training programs and shit like that. And then, so I came back, paid for that. I paid for 6 months rent with a lot of the rest of the money I had. And then I started eventually, I think it was like, then it must have been about 8 months after I originally quit the bank that I started like officially like doing like some kind of level of like online personal training and stuff. Now, the first year I made like £9,000, right, in my first year. So I remember doing my tax return and it was like, you don't need to pay any tax. And I was like, yeah. I only realized later that that's not a good thing because it means you're not doing that well, right? But just as my money was running out, that kind of supplemented it enough for me to keep living and stuff. It got really fine. It got to a point, at one point, actually a lot later than people would expect, where I had zero money, like pretty much zero. Like we're talking
Australia,
like
baby.
exactly right. You've done your research. And so although my case wasn't like, I'm pretty comfortable just coming up with a plan, right? And if I didn't, and at the end of the day, I was lucky because I knew, right, that I could go back home, say, Mum, can I stay here again? Right. And then look for another job, take another job for a bit and go again. Right. But like for me, I also think that I need to put a bit of pressure on myself. Like otherwise I just won't do anything, man. Because I'm just not someone who wakes up in the morning and just fucking go, go, go. Like I need to like give myself like deadlines, right? And if one of those deadlines is going broke, then that's great. Like that's going to be quite a motivating factor. You know what I mean? And so I managed to eventually start making some money. I did not monetize my YouTube, social media generally. I did not monetize that efficiently. I probably still don't monetize it efficiently, but enough. Do you know what I mean? Enough to live comfortably, like, but not like if I really wanted to absolutely maximize how much, but it would be a whole different thing. Then you wouldn't enjoy it so much. It's a trade off, right? And so I gradually started making enough money, and as I ran out of money, I started earning a bit, and it was quite pretty fine. But and so like I suppose it depends how you work, right? Now, a lot of people who are like more say risk averse would want to start like working on something whilst they're at the job still, maybe try and get something off the ground. I know Rob was saying that, I think he said a few times that he quit his job when he started earning more from his. Now, to me, I feel like that's pretty late, man. Like, but it depends how much you hate your job, right? I hated my fucking job. And so like, I wasn't going to like, that's two wages, man. You know what I mean? So, I was pretty quick to quit, but I'm just, lucky because I got the safety net of just being able to go and live in my parents, even if they've changed my fucking bedroom, I'll just whatever, um, you know, and then I'll just get a job and do whatever. But you have to take a bit at some point, like you're gonna have to take a bit of a risk, and there's no better time than when it's socially acceptable to live at your mum and dad's house. Do you know what I mean? That might as well be when you take the risk, like because it's a good fucking safety net that. So I think for people, a lot of people are going to be in jobs that they don't like, right? And like it's rich that YouTubers sit there and say, "Fucking do what I do." Look at me, like I'm just one case, like I'm just one person, and maybe I could have tried to do this 10 times over and just been in the sea of. Maybe the other 9 times I might have been in the sea of YouTube channels that never fucking made it, right? Maybe. Who knows? I could just be lucky. And so I feel in a sense a little bit like I don't really do that many podcasts because I feel in a sense like I'll tell you what I can tell you, but don't expect for me to change your life, right? Because I might just be a lucky person who was, in one way or another was fortunate and things just fell right. And I don't know how many lessons you can really take from one individual experience, but even now, like I'm not set to anything. I might, I think as long as I enjoy making YouTube videos, I'll make YouTube videos. But if I have to start again, I'll start again. It's cool, man. I just feel like practically you need safety, right? So it's harder for people in countries where there is no safety, right? If your family can't afford to keep you, or because really now, right? If I'm never going to be homeless, right? You're probably never going to be homeless, right? If we wanted to, it'd be embarrassing. Like I could move back in with mum and dad when I'm 50. I mean, they'll probably be dead by then, to be fair. So I probably won't. But I could move into their old home when I'm 50. Right. Hang on. How old am I? Maybe you will. Who cares, right? That's beside the point. Let's not speculate. No offense, mum and dad, if you listen. But like, it's going to be really embarrassing, but it's not the end. Like, that's it. Embarrassing. Do you know what I mean? It's just not like, and so like you've got that potential, you've got the potential to try shit. And like it's just stupid not to. And I see people like, although I sit here and say, like, yeah, I'm lucky, right? You know, obviously like quite fortunate circumstances that like I've somehow managed to create a fucking life that I'm pretty content with, right? But there's other people, I see other people that are far more lucky, right? And far more, and like, or lucky, whatever, or people that are like mega successful. People have sick lives, and like it's weird when you look at the global population and like the imbalance between fortune and misfortune, right, is crazy, right? And of course, if you could bring everyone out of poverty and suffering and everything, then of course you would. But also, I like that there's some people out there that are just mad fortunate or like mad successful through one way or another and just live insane fucking experiences. It gives me satisfaction to know that even if not me, someone is living a fucking mad life. Like, I love it. I love like fucking like people who just do what they, do you know what I mean? Like Richard Branson just going to fucking space, right? That's sick. Like, you know what I mean? Whatever you think about him for whatever reason, or just generally, like, even if people, you know, even if people seem egregiously fortunate, people born into billionaire families, right? Good, good. Someone's doing it, man. I'm happy for you. I'm glad
Also,
someone.
that person might be upset, right?
Well,
Because
yeah. Well, that's another.
it
That's
seems
the
good in your head first reaction, but the second reaction might be that
yeah, for
person
sure.
might hate their life in actuality because they never struggled for anything and
Exactly.
everything was given to them.
I'm happy for them, and they're not even happy for themselves, man. I know. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the thing in it. You don't. Well,
You don't know. You don't
hedonic
live in their
treadmill.
shoes.
You know, just relativism, isn't it? It's all you don't know what it's like, do you? But I mean, I suppose that's why people must get more. They probably get more from experiencing, like, you know, people who actually genuinely started from the bottom, you know, and made it. Like, that must be crazy. You know what I mean? Like, you grew up in some slum, and then next minute you're buying like your parents like a fucking house and wherever, like, you know what I mean? Like
Conor
people who,
McGregor,
yeah, for sure.
it's like plumbing, 12 hours, 14 hours a day, minimum wage to owning the world. And you get to watch that
Yeah,
unfold
yeah,
and see the rise and fall. And people are here rooting for the failure. People here rooting for the, I mean, it's exciting to just see the story happen and unfold
for
because you
sure.
know that it's real.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You're just witnessing different, you know, you're witnessing just 7 billion human experiments going on. And it's just interesting, isn't it?
And I think that this is the first time ever that you really could witness so many different human experiences. You know, never before could you just open up your phone or open up an internet and see how other people are living. And it's
Mm.
frustrating for so many people. Why are they living like that? How come that person's so fortunate? Why do you think your
Oh,
initial reaction is, I'm so happy? Whereas most people's initial reaction is, I'm so upset that's not me.
see, that's something I thought about quite a bit, to be honest, because like obviously having, you know, as soon as you've got like a few followers on Instagram, then you become this, like, you've got this social responsibility, right? You know, if I post pictures, right, with me shirt off and I'm fucking 10% body fat, like, people, there are a group of people who think that you're creating like body image disorders and shit like that, right? So that goes for everything, right? Someone posts the fucking new car, someone feels bad about themselves. Oh shit, you know, I'm never gonna get that. I'm never gonna have this life. I'm never gonna have a girlfriend like that. I'm never gonna have this and that. And it becomes really like, I just, I really dislike this whole train of thought, right? Because first of all, right, if something makes you feel bad and you keep looking at it, then, you know, that's an issue for a start. You know what I mean? It's like putting your hand in the fire and just keeping it there and going, "Oh, this hurts. Shit, my hand's melting." You know what I mean? That's the first thing. The second thing is like the issue, you can't protect people from the world, right? Now, things might exacerbate people's insecurities, but they exacerbate an already existing insecurity. You can't protect people from anything that might make them feel bad. If you want to fix that, you don't, it's like saying, right, I don't want my girlfriend to cheat on me. So I'm never going to let her see any guys ever. She's never going to leave the house, right? All right. But wouldn't it be better just have a good relationship with your girlfriend? And then, do you know what I mean? And like, there are things you can't protect anyone. You can't protect people for being exposed. Same goes with like kids and stuff, like for certain things. Like, you know, you can't protect people from being exposed to everything that life and society and people are going to expose them to, right? And like, if you have a problem with it, or if it makes you feel a certain way, then the problem isn't the real world. It comes back to like, this is the real world. Huh? Some people are rich. Some people are fucking attractive. Like, get over it. Do you know what I mean? You might not be. Right? You might, some people, someone might be a 10 out of 10, right? You might be a 5 out of 10. Well, guess what? Loads of people are 5 out of 10s. There's 4 out of 10s. You know, I'm talking, it's a stupid example, right? Because, but rich people exist, fortunate people exist, you know, and like, you can't go around just looking for things like to set you off. Like, do you know what I mean? This made me feel bad. That I'm like, and again, that is really just, do you choose to play other people's games, right? I'm not gonna do that, right? I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna like not make a video about losing body fat in case it kicks off someone's fucking complex, like someone's issue. Like, now that might seem a bit like not very fucking compassionate, right? But in the grand scheme of things, I think that's best for everyone, isn't it? In the grand scheme of things, isn't it better if you get to a point where you can open Instagram and look at look at a picture of a rich, fucking attractive person with everything they want in the world and shit that you're never going to have, and it not ruin your day, right? Isn't it better if you can get to that point, right? And so like, the whole concept of, you know, this makes people feel bad, you know, it's like the whole in fitness, right? There's a big raging debate about like who's natural and who's not natural, and steroids, and like, does this person, they take steroids but they say they don't, and so they sell supplements, and there's this army of imaginary 15-year-olds at home spending the mum's credit card, you know, using the mum's credit card to buy creatine and crying when they're not like Simeon Panda the next fucking day, right? There's this made up army of fucking people, right? These people don't exist, mate. Like, mate, I'm not saying no one's ever looked at someone and thought, "Oh, I'll never be like that." I felt a bit bad about themselves, but yeah, carry on, like, just carry on. You know what I mean? What are you gonna do after that? Eat your breakfast and go about your day, like, you know what I mean? And like, this, like, see, I'm not saying that there's nothing morally objectionable about getting a physique through using steroids, but saying you got it through a certain supplement and using this, right? That, of course, I'm on board, right? That's wrong. You shouldn't do it. You probably have questionable ethics to some extent, right? If you do that, although people can compartmentalize their ethical choices quite well and rationalize things quite well. So like, you never know, people might actually, other than that, might actually be quite normal, like quite nice people, right? You know what I mean? Anyway, it's besides the point, right? Either way, that's not a great thing to do, right? And so everyone should make their individual choice for whether they do it. But the point is, can you protect everyone from this or from everything? Because that's just fitness, a small subsection of fitness, right? Guess what, right? If you buy the aftershave, you're not going to all of a sudden be in fucking Milan wearing a suit with an attractive woman on a balcony. That doesn't happen either. Do you know what I mean? And so like this is like advertising, capitalism. It's just how things work, right? There's always an implication. Every advert is at least these days, is an implication of like, get this product, you'll feel like this, or it'll improve your life this way, or this and that. And like there are a few things that are just like the bare bones utility, right? You buy a vacuum cleaner, it's because it fucking sucks dust up, right? But a lot of things are lifestyle choices. You buy this car, you're gonna feel like this in it. It's this experience, right? And like a lot of those aren't really, they're not real, right? Because you might buy something and you're like, oh shit, hang on a minute, it's just a fucking car, right? And you're gonna learn that, pretty. It might be an expensive lesson, it might be a cheap one, depending on how quick you learn it, right? How many cars you have to go through before you realize it's never gonna be the one, right? And like that's just part of being a grown up, part of being an adult. You have to be exposed to things. Like not everyone in the world has your best intentions at heart all the time. Like, sorry about that. Like, what do you want? Like, do you know what I mean? Isn't it? Aren't you much better off if you learn to cope with it? It's like you said about before. I said, oh yeah, you look at people who've got all these crazy lives, and you said, oh, well, they might not be happy because they've never had to work for it or never had to deal with anything. So that's all, Well, same for people who accept they might not be spoiled financially, but they might be spoiled emotionally by like, oh, everything is always, oh, we'll protect you from everything. Nothing bad ever happens. Something happens, just, we'll sort it out. Your mom and dad will sort it out, or like, oh, does this offend you? Oh, get it away. Like you're spoiled because you live in this world where you think, oh, everything's just fine for me. Like, oh, I never have to deal with anything, and it's just another way of just making people, like, I suppose, less resilient,
You think that's why COVID was such a problem for people, was because that was the first test that they were forced to do in their entire life. And they said to themselves, oh my God, like this is so awful. This is so crazy. And it has been awful and crazy, but it also is a test in a lot of ways. And that's the first time that a lot of people have had to deal with a test in life, because we didn't go through wars. We hadn't had plagues in a long time. So people are like, what the hell? Why is this happening? This is the craziest thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard really to categorize like people's reactions to COVID because they've been so varied across such a spectrum,
Yeah.
right? And obviously that spectrum correlates a lot with like political stance, like geographical, like age, everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably true. People it's very hard to be. It's almost a catch-22 because it's hard to be appreciative of how easy you've got it, right? Without having actually gone through real hardship. Like
Mm-hmm.
the worst thing that's happened to like most people, right? Most of my mates, like most people who are, who live in my generation, who live in the UK, the worst thing that's happened is like your nan has died or something. Do you know what I mean? It's bad, like, but that is, people do die. Do you know what I mean? It's not great, but nans die, right? That's what they do. I mean, they do other shit as well, but that is one thing they do. The last thing usually. um, anyway, like, so it's hard to really envisage, what life is like. My dad is a fucking like he's retired now, right? But he's so like his work ethic to me is just like, it's not like it's like complaining just doesn't enter his fucking head, right? Because he just grew up like super working class, left school when he was like 14, worked like on a milk float, like delivering fucking milk, whatever. And then he worked from like the age of 14 until like the age of like, I think early 70s, right? That's a long working life, you know what I mean? Uh, and like, and the obviously even to him, it doesn't see, because of the just relativism of your own experience. To him, it doesn't. He's not like, oh yeah, it's not. You don't ask him about what he did, and he doesn't tell you this sob story, like, oh, you know. Whereas me, I even feel a little bit like, you know, I'm like, yeah, I worked at McDonald's for a few years, and I feel like that's something like I've earned me fucking stripes. Do you know what I mean? I drop fucking nuggets in a vat, man. That's it, mate. It's not hard, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's not difficult. I was paid like a lawful wage, mate, and I had just normal working conditions, and like it's just normal. You know what I mean? But now anyone who's had a bad job or had any kind of like what's considered like a lower skill job, right? They put it in the fucking X Factor story, like, do you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, like, oh, look at me, I'm a YouTuber now, but I used to do this, you know, when I used to work in this factory, or I used to do that. Like, so, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you know, and so, like, you can only ever live in the world that you live. You can only ever experience it through your own fucking lens, right? And it's hard to do that, yet try and be, you know, empathetic to other people's experiences, and try and kind of get some kind of perspective on what it would be like if you weren't so fortunate, or if you were in someone else's shoes. It's a difficult, you know, it's not that it's hard for you to imagine in that very moment, right? Because the charity advert comes on the screen, there's a fucking thirsty donkey that's carrying 8 things up a mountain or something, and you're like, shit, I'm going to donate to this donkey, man. Do you know what I mean? You text somewhere, and it's, you know, you send a fiver to someone, right? Because you can empathize at that very moment, right? But the trick is always keeping things at the forefront of your mind. It's not everyone's capable of watching watching some footage of a war zone and thinking like, shit, this shit's terrible, man, you know, and being saddened and touched by it, right? But like, how well can you keep this perspective, you know, when you're partying in fucking Vegas or some shit like that? How well can you keep it? Like, and that's true for a million things, isn't it? How well can you keep your perspective for because the clear thought is easy, right? But keeping it is difficult, right? Keeping the perspective that you are able to achieve at, temporarily, keeping that and having that in moments when it matters is difficult, right? You know, because you can sit there, you're in the fucking bath, you've got some candles going, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't worry about things, man. There's nothing to worry. Oh, why did I get worked up about that? That was stupid, you know. It's when I put it all into perspective, it's, you know, this, it was a silly thing to worry about. And then next minute, you're busy. There's shit, you got a fucking deadline or something like that. The phone's ringing. You're doing this, you're doing that, and you're worrying about something, man. You're like, shit. And then like, you can't just get there. You can't just snap back to. It's difficult, man. But having that, but it's also a skill. Like, it's also something that I think you can practice. And if you get able to to keep things, like, it's like as if you could write like 10 things and just have them fucking etched into your vision, right? And just click that and they go boom. You know, don't worry about this because it's pointless, etc., etc. Right? You got 10 things, right? What would the 10 things be, man? It's a good question to ask yourself, in it. And maybe I'll write them down. Who knows, right? But if you could keep those things, then how different would your life be? You know, you wouldn't get worked up about shit. You wouldn't get angry about shit and worried about shit. You'd be better for other people. You'd be more compassionate. You'd be, you know, that's the difficulty though. Just pimp, just keeping all the shit you already know there when you need it.
I think that's why we have such reverence and respect for Navy SEALs and people who have gone through war or difficult, because we know inherently that they can't just turn it off. They've seen their friends die. They've seen how they've had to kill somebody, or that can't ever not be in their conscious.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so inherently there's a level of respect for that, because we can never have that. So they'll always have that empathy. They'll at least have their friend dying right next to them. And so we inherently say, okay, like, we respect that, you know?
Yeah, so suppose that's the other end of the instead of trying to remember things, it's like things you can't not remember, really, isn't it? I suppose it's just the other end of the coin.
Is the experience is so
two sides
deep.
of the same coin. Yeah.
This has been a pleasure, my friend. The longest podcast
I enjoyed
that
it. Was it?
I've recorded.
Okay.
Where should we send somebody to let them know that you enjoyed it, if they're still listening to this point? Where do you want to hear from people? Where's the best place?
I don't really, whatever. If people want to find me, you can find me. I don't care about the plug, man. I don't care about the plug. If you wanna find me, then say what's up. That's it, man.
Sweet.
Thanks for if you have made it this far, then I appreciate you listening to me ramble for so long, because I understand that I say certain words quite frequently. I say mate a lot and like a lot, and you know what I mean a lot. And I understand that can be moderately perturbing for certain individuals. So I appreciate you listening so far, and I hope I didn't waste your time as well. I hope it was blunt enough for everyone. And also, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
And my pleasure. And we'll put your links below and plug you up.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.